Hello friends, and welcome to today's video on managing overcommitment by harnessing the power of saying no. Guided by the timeless wisdom of Stoic philosophy, we'll explore how to handle our fast-paced modern lives, where many of us struggle with taking on too many tasks, obligations, and responsibilities. In a world driven by societal pressures, fear of missing out, and difficulty setting boundaries, it's easy to become overwhelmed. This often leads to immense stress, burnout, and a diminished quality of life. Fortunately, the ancient Stoics from Greece and Rome offered insights that remain relevant today. They emphasized the importance of focusing on what is within our control, living with virtue and integrity, and cultivating self-discipline. In this video, we'll dive into valuable Stoic strategies to help you escape the cycle of overcommitment. You'll learn how to prioritize your obligations, align them with your core values, and confidently say no to excessive demands on your time and energy. We'll draw on the wisdom of Stoic masters like Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius to distinguish between what is essential and what is not. Their teachings will guide us toward living with greater intention, balance, and peace of mind. So stay tuned as we embark on this journey of Stoic self-empowerment. Even if the concepts initially seem challenging, I'm confident that their simplicity and practicality will become evident through relatable examples from our Here is a Draft introduction section. For the video following the outline provided by the end, you'll possess powerful mental tools to reclaim your time, energy, and autonomy. Let's Chapter 1: Understanding Overcommitment. Begin to overcome something, we must first understand it. Let's start by examining what overcommitment looks like in our daily lives. Overcommitment refers to taking on more tasks, obligations, and responsibilities than one can reasonably manage within one's available time and resources. It's when our plates become too full, leaving us spread thin and struggling to get our best in any area of life. The signs are often clear: constant feeling rushed, overwhelmed, or behind schedule. You are neglecting self-care activities like exercise, quality sleep, and nutrition, strained relationships due to lack of presence, and ultimately increased stress, anxiety, and burnout. The Stoics warned against this unsustainable state, preaching living simply and within one's means. As Seneca said, set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, is this the condition that I feared? Just like practicing poverty for a few days reminded the Stoics of what mattered. Being aware of overcommitment reminds us that we cannot keep piling on indefinitely without consequences. Our mental and physical health inevitably suffer, yet overcommitment persists as we chase an endless loop of productivity, people-pleasing, and the fear of missing opportunities. We commit to too many work projects, family obligations, social engagements, and personal development pursuits to have and do it all. But the Stoics would urge us to pause, go inward, and reflect with self-honesty whether those outward commitments serve our highest good and values. Seneca cautioned, most powerful is he who has himself in his own power. We can start making more conscious choices by understanding overcommitment as a detrimental state of being out of alignment and bondage to external forces. This awareness is the essential first step. The modern world moves relentlessly, constantly demanding our time and energy. We are inundated with opportunities for career advancement, social status, intellectual growth, and myriad other pursuits that seem important or even essential. The fear of missing out or falling behind can compel us to say yes to everything, piling commitment upon commitment. Yet the harsh reality is that we are merely human beings with finite resources. Our attention, energy, and willpower are limited despite our ambitions or determination. When we overextend ourselves, something inevitably needs to be addressed in the process. Our health may suffer from poor dietary habits, lack of sleep and exercise, or our key relationships become strained due to constant distraction and absence. Our Work performance may decline from rushing through tasks in an agitated state, or it may be our inner well-being that gets sacrificed as we have no time for solitude, contemplation, or simply being in the present moment. The Stoics recognize the folly of such overindulgence in externals and commitments at the expense of our core selves. Epicus admonished wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. By wanting and craving less from the external world, we free ourselves from the relentless striving and burden of overcommitment. Marcus Aurelius echoed this sentiment, writing, "It is not so much what your circumstances are as how you turn them to advantage rather than continually adding to our obligations." The Stoic path involves intentionally stepping back to curate our commitments. We reduce the overwhelm by only surrounding ourselves with what is essential and aligned with our principles. We create the head space to operate from a grounded center, fully present with the task or person before us rather than mentally jumping between a fragment multitude of duties. Moreover, the Stoics advocated living with contemptuous mundi, a detached indifference to externals like wealth, fame, and social status. Returning from the frenzy of overcommitment, we realize that most compulsions stem from chasing these empty and permanent pursuits. Instead, the Stoic way is one of simplicity, moderation, and reason. We strip away the inessentials to focus our limited time and energy on what truly matters according to our values and principles. This is the path to tranquility and inner freedom amidst the chaos and overstimulation of modern life. So as we initiate this journey of overcoming overcommitment, the first critical step is cultivating lucid awareness around the issue and its root causes. Only when we understand overcommitment as detrimental can we start making mindful adjustments to live with greater intention and alignment. One of the core principles of Chapter 2, the Stoic concept of control. Stoic philosophy is distinguishing between what is within our control and what is not. The ancient Stoics believed that much of human anxiety and suffering arises from worrying about or trying to control things that are ultimately out of our hands. As the Roman philosopher Seneca famously stated, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. We needlessly torment ourselves when we become preoccupied with hypothetical scenarios, external circumstances beyond our influence, or other people's behavior. How does this apply to the challenge of overcommitment? The Stoics should carefully evaluate which of our numerous commitments, tasks, and obligations truly fall under our reasoned choice and voluntary action. These are the only things we have complete control over. Workplace demands from an employer, family obligations to loved ones, prior promises made. Many commitments can feel inescapable or forced upon us from the outside, but the Stoics remind us that our perception and response are still ours to control. We reduce overwhelm by separating the commitments we can realistically manage through our discipline and effort from those imposed by external forces. We reframe our perspective, focusing energy where it will move the needle rather than struggling against what we cannot change. For example, while we may not control specific duties at work, we can control our mindset, efficiency in executing them, and ability to communicate boundaries with loved ones. We cannot control their expectations, but can guide conversations. Respecting mutual needs. The Stoic path does not question every commitment. Still, it distinguishes what we embrace by choice in alignment with our core values and principles. This discernment over what we actualize in reality rather than agonize over ideals leads to a liberated, empowered way of being. As Epicus taught, the essence of philosophy is that of distinguishing what is yours from what isn't yours. Overcoming overcommitment begins by reclaiming ownership of what is ours to control this dichotomy between what is up to us versus what is not formed the bedrock of Stoic thinking. The Stoics believe that while we cannot control external events, we can control our internal responses and judgments about them. Our minds act as the subjective lens through which we interpret the objective reality before us. Marcus Aurelius exemplified this perspective, writing, "The universe is change, our life is what our thoughts make it." Two people can face the same event, a work setback family conflict, or any other external circumstance, yet their internal experience and ability to respond productively will differ based on their judgment of the situation. The person focused on factors outside their control, like coworkers' unfair criticism or a loved one's insensitive behavior, will be pulled into anxiety, anger, and victimhood. However, one who reorients toward their actions and mindset remains grounded in personal agency and wisdom. We free up immense mental and emotional bandwidth by relinquishing the compulsion to control the uncontrollable. We stop flailing against currents stronger than ourselves and instead focus that energy on adjusting ourselves within the conditions before us. This is the path to overcoming overwhelm by overcommitment. Rather than lamenting all the tasks piled on our plates, burning out trying to do the impossible, we get honest about our sphere of influence, like subtracting everything beyond the scope of the essential. It brings clarity. Epictetus urged, make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. With discernment over our actual zone of control, we can prioritize accordingly. We uphold chosen commitments that align with our core virtues and values, while making peace by letting go of the rest. Obligations to an employer are negotiable based on open dialogue around mutual interests. Promises to friends and family can be reevaluated against reasoned principles about what is genuinely healthy for those bonds. Even past commitments made in haste can be re-examined with courage. The Stoics did not advocate flaking on responsibilities, but brought our highest rationality to what we would take on by shedding inessential burdens. We create breathing room to give our entire presence and excellence to each remaining duty for ourselves and others. There is immense liberation in no longer spreading oneself thin, but centering energy on manageable areas of direct influence. This level of intentionality nurtures our ability to make skilled ethical choices both in the planning phase and amidst life's inevitable changes and curveballs. We become more responsive rather than constantly reactive. Ultimately, the Stoics viewed life as loaning temporary circumstance for us to practice wisdom and virtue. We cannot ultimately control whether those circumstances align with all our preferences, but we can fully control our use of reason, courage, humanity, and self-discipline. With them we gain immense power by distinguishing the arena where our will and actions govern from the domain ruled by external factors. Not power over the world, but sovereignty over our own conduct and inner state, the only things that were ever ours. To begin with this reclamation of control within our sphere opens the path to overcoming the delirium of overt. Chapter 3: Prioritizing your commitments. Commitment. Once we've distinguished which commitments are realistically within our control, the next crucial step is prioritizing them. Seneca wisely stated, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. The Stoics understood that while our time on earth is finite, we often squander it on trivial pursuits that don't align with our deepest values and aspirations. Overcommitment frequently results from saying yes to too many inessential tasks and obligations. But how do we determine what's truly essential? The Stoics would have us regularly reflect on our core virtues, life philosophies, and highest priority goals, then critically analyze whether our current commitments harmonize with those guiding principles. One practical approach is using the Eisenhower matrix to categorize commitments into 1. Urgent and important; 2. Not urgent but important; 3. Urgent but not important. For neither urgent nor important, the Stoics would focus intently on the crucial commitments, those advancing our virtues and life's purpose. Urgent, trivial matters could be delegated or discontinued entirely. Alternatively, we can use the ABC method, labeling commitments as a for essential, B for nice to, if time allows, and C for superfluous time wasters, to discard. Stoics aim for in a life. The key is developing a customized prioritization system that empowers you to live with intentionality. As Epictetus taught, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Life pulls us in many directions, but checking in reevaluating against our deepest life callings, and bravely cutting out the excess creates space to give our entire presence to what matters most, as Marcus Aurelius reminded me. Think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy. To love. Prioritizing strengthens our ability to live with that appreciation. Truly, the ancient Stoics were relentless in pursuing living according to reason and virtue. They saw themselves as crafters, deliberate sculptors, who chiseled away at the inessential aspects of life to reveal their most authentic selves. Underneath this meant frequently returning to first principles, clarifying their core values, then meticulously aligning their daily actions and future commitments with those lodestars, just as master artists must step back to evaluate their work they perform. Continual self-appraisals to ensure their path remains true. For Stoics such as Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, virtues such as wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance were their primary focus. They viewed any commitment that did not ultimately serve the embodiment and expansion of those virtues as relatively insignificant. From this perspective, the ambitions many chases, wealth, power, popularity, sensory pleasures, are exposed as distractions from the only pursuits that truly matter. As Seneca wrote, no man has ever become rich by addition, only by subtraction of his cravings. By frequently re-entering on their highest values and aspirations, the Stoics avoided getting bound up in commitments driven by desires disconnected from their authentic nature. Their energy was conserved solely for what enabled their genuine flourishing. Of course, this clarity on priorities took tremendous self-awareness honed through daily rituals of meditation, journaling, and intentional living. The Stoics worked diligently to understand themselves, their judgment biases, ego fears, societal conditioning, etc. That insight made their motivations for various roles and responsibilities more evident. They evaluated each potential commitment through the lens of personal truth and wisdom. Would this serve their growth in virtue, or merely indulge temporary whims? Could they engage with focus and full presence, or would they inevitably be half-hearted? Did it align with their ultimate purpose on earth, or generate busyness? This level of discernment allowed Stoics to cut through the noise of social pressure and perceived obligations. They could respectfully say no to solicitations that, while perhaps urgent or flashy on the surface, failed to pass the litmus test of serving their highest aims. Furthermore, the Stoics recognized that maintaining perspective on life's bigger picture was critical to wise prioritization. Epictetus cautioned, "Don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do happen, and you will go on well." So, even as diligent prioritizers, the Stoics stayed flexible amidst life's inevitable curveballs and setbacks. They avoided staking their identity or purpose on any single commitment, knowing only that change is constant. This outlook empowered them to prioritize gracefully when circumstances shifted. Ultimately, prioritizing our commitments comes down to continually realigning our time, energy, and life force toward our highest ideals and raison d'etre. It's a never-ending practice of self-understanding, bravely offloading excess baggage, and intentionally fashioning a life devoted to cultivating wisdom and excellence of character. Stoic exemplars demonstrated that lives of meaning, virtue, and tranquility flow from ruthless prioritization. All else is mere noise in service of nothing. With a clear understanding of Chapter 4, the power of saying no, our highest priority commitments, we must develop the fortitude to say no to the non-essentials that threaten to overload us. As Marcus Aurelius stated, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. The Stoics preached the virtue of acting with integrity, refusing to violate one's reasoned principles merely to please others or avoid discomfort. Over committing out of social pressure or fear of disappointing people is misaligned with this philosophy. When we say yes to commitments mentally flagged as B's or C's, those much lower priorities that don't serve our core values, we dilute the time and energy available for our highest callings. We diminish our power to lead an integrated, intentional life. Of course, Saying no is extremely difficult, especially for people pleasers. It can feel rude, selfish, or like we're letting others down. Our instinct is often to avoid the temporary discomfort of that conversation, but the Stoics would advise doing the more challenging thing, being truthful about our limited capacity, setting proper expectations, and staying resolute in upholding our boundaries. As Epictetus taught, if you don't wish to be a miserable person, don't be a person of many pursuits. With practice, we can say no with empathy, tact, and confidence, and we can say that preserving our ability to show up for life's essentials is better than overextending it. Perhaps I appreciate you considering me, but I must regretfully decline to preserve work-life balance. We lighten our burden by shedding extraneous commitments that don't align with our values and priorities. We reclaim sovereignty over our most precious resources, our time, energy, and entire presence for what truly matters most. The power of no is the power to craft a life of focused excellence over frenetic mediocrity. Seneca said, a great person is ever unhurried and composed. With discernment, we too can cultivate that centeredness. Saying no can be incredibly challenging when the ask comes from a position of authority, like a superior at work requesting we take on an additional project. The conditioning to obey can run deep. However, the Stoics would remind us that we are only truly free when governed by our own reason will rather than external pressures. As Epictetus declared, no one is free who is not master of themselves. While prudence in communicating a no is wise, the Stoics saw compromising our core values out of deference as debasing our highest selves. They prioritize the sovereignty of the rational mind over pleasing or appeasing others' demands. Marcus Aurelius epitomized this self-possession, noting, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Let your ruling principle override all else. The Stoics worked vigilantly to clarify their ruling principles, their foundational beliefs, moral code, and personal mission. Then they made decisions and set boundaries accordingly without excessive inner turmoil. From this grounded place they could say no to inappropriate requests with grace yet firmness. I must decline, as devoting myself to that would prevent me from honoring other key obligations. No guilt, anger, or defensiveness is required. Furthermore, the STO highlighted how overtaxing ourselves rarely serves anyone's interests. We spread frenetic, mediocre efforts over too many fronts rather than giving our most entire to what matters most. Seneca warned, to be everywhere is to be nowhere. By turning down superfluous commitments, we retain presence to execute our highest priorities with mastery and excellence. This steadies our inner spirit, nurturing the consistent practice of virtue that the Stoics cherish. Saying no allows us to show up as our best selves for each chosen sphere of life, not haphazardly strewn about but rooted and composed. The Stoics understood the importance of taking a long-term perspective. They realized that becoming overcommitted ultimately diminishes the sustainable impact. Burnout, exhaustion, and deteriorating health from accommodating too many pursuits at once hinder our ability to give back meaningfully over a lifetime. The Stoics advocated pacing ourselves intensely focused, but on an enduring path fueled by self-discipline. So while saying no can feel acutely uncomfortable at any given moment, it serves our power for lasting contribution and serenity. It protects our ability to show up wholeheartedly for those people and pursuits most deserving of our finite stores of energy and care. Ultimately, the brave skill of saying no comes from a place of unshakable understanding of our deepest selves. It takes profound self-awareness to distinguish the commitments that empower our essence from those that drain it. By honing this clarity through practices like journaling, meditation, and studying philosophy, we become adept at setting wise boundaries. We dismiss requests or opportunities that don't augment our vert vires and cherished purposes. With poised compassion and conviction, we communicate a respectful no whenever something doesn't align. We reclaim sovereignty over our precious time and focus on what does resonate at our core, and in doing so we course correct toward the centeredness and flourishing that the Stoics revered. As Epictetus summarized, no thing outward has any power entitled to overrule reason. Reason is the guiding principle, while saying no helps reduce an excessive commitment load. True sustainable change requires cultivating the virtue of self-discipline. As Epicus stated, no person is free who is not master of themselves. The Stoics saw undisciplined behavior constantly giving into momentary whims and impulses as slavery to our base instincts. True freedom came from consciously aligning actions with our highest reason principles and values. When it comes to overcommitment, a lack of self-discipline is often the root cause. We passively accumulate obligations, failing to filter or create structured systems to manage our time and energy. Distractions and shifting priorities lead to procrastination on essential tasks. However, by cultivating self-discipline as a habit, we can assertively control our schedules and commitments. We learn to evaluate each request thoughtfully before acceptance. We time box efforts and hold protective boundaries. Helpful techniques include time boxing your calendar into blocks for productivity, scheduling buffers between meetings to avoid back-to-back chaos, developing a morning routine to start each day intentionally doing the hardest tasks first when energy is highest. As the ancient philosopher Musonius Rufus taught, practice perseverance daily. Begin by persevering in something small, and from there advance to greater labors with diligent practice in these disciplines. Managing overcommitment becomes almost automatic. We proactively uphold our priorities instead of reactively getting swept along by external demands. Ultimately, self-discipline liberates us to direct our finite time and effort towards our most significant life aims, uninhibited by trivial distractions. As Seneca proclaimed, to be able to enjoy one's past life is to live twice. Self-mastery ensures we live that worthy life the first time, the final key to effectively. Chapter 6: Reflection and Continuous Improvement. Combating overcommitment is the Stoic practice of continuous self-reflection and improvement. As Socrates stated in a quote that greatly influenced Stoic thought, the unexamined life is not worth living. The Stoics knew our busy lives could become mindless routines disconnected from our core intentions. We must pause realigning to ensure we can realign held values and principles without pausing to reflect. This is why techniques like nightly journaling, twice yearly retreats examining one's progress, and daily meditation checking in with our inner guidance were vital. These practices created space to assess whether our current commitments were worthwhile investments honestly. For example, a weekly review may reveal a commitment such as attending neighborhood association meetings, which feels mandatory yet brings little fulfillment. This signals an opportunity to reevaluate discontinuing it. Alternatively, a personal goal to learn a new language may have fallen by the wayside due to overwork. With intentional reflection, we were reminded to course correct by protecting time for that commitment. The Stoics saw life as continually striving towards our ideals while adapting to changing conditions, regularly revisiting our reservations of time and effort with courageous honesty about what must go or stay prevents stagnation and overcommitment creep. Seneca advised, there is nothing the busy person is less in control of in their own life, but through diligent self-examination and realignment we steer ourselves towards our highest aims. Overcoming overcommitment is an ongoing practice of distinguishing essentials, setting boundaries, and honoring our limited human capacities, yet that path ultimately leads to living coherently at our maximum potential in service of what matters most. In this Chapter 7 Conclusion video, we've explored a range of influential Stoic philosophies and practices for overcoming the modern-day affliction of overcommitment. We began by understanding what overcommitment looks and feels like, that constant state of being rushed, overwhelmed, and out of balance. The Stoics wisely warned that such excessive busyness leads to burnout, strained relationships, and a life that is not fully lived. We learned the central Stoic principle of control, which involves carefully identifying which commitments are within our reasoned choice to manage and which are imposed by external forces. It's about focusing our energy where we can make a difference rather than struggling against what we cannot change. We then examine ways to prioritize our highest value commitments, ensuring we devote our precious time and effort to what advances our most profound virtues and life philosophies. Tactics like the Eisenhower Matrix and ABC Method provide frameworks for discernment over urgencies. Crucially, we embrace the courage to say no, refusing additional commitments that don't align with those rigorously defined priorities. While challenging, upholding this boundary honors our integrity and create space to give our entire presence to what matters most to make it all sustainable. We discuss the Stoic virtue of self-discipline, developing habits and routines that turn prioritization and boundary setting into an almost automatic practice. We become conscious directors of our time, not passive recipients of others' demands. Finally, we explore the importance of continuous self-reflection to identify commitment misalignments and make adjustments. The unexamined life of overcommitment drifts disconnected from our highest values and callings. By embodying all these Stoic teachings, we by reclaiming sovereignty over our lives, our limited time, energy, and attention, we can overcome feelings of being overwhelmed, rediscover balance, and live with coherence as our most authentic selves. I encourage you to start implementing these philosophies today. It may feel uncomfortable at first, as any growth process does, but have faith that with diligent practice, the simplicity and power of the Stoic path will become clear through your own experiences. As you apply these teachings, you will begin to savor moments that are currently buried under a clutter of commitments. You'll experience a profound sense of ownership over your daily life and ultimately live more intentionally, directing your finite human existence toward your greatest dreams and highest ideals. Please share your journey of applying this wisdom in the comments below. Let's build a community of accountability and mutual encouragement as modern Stoics navigate overcommitment. If this message resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more philosophical insights on thriving in our hectic modern world. I'll continue to bring lessons from the ancient Stoics and other wisdom traditions to illuminate a brighter path forward.